October 6th, 1973, Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. While Israeli soldiers were in synagogues, Egypt and Syria launched a coordinated assault across two fronts simultaneously. In the first 48 hours, Israel lost 500 tanks. 500 in 2 days. The crews who survived came back with one message: the tank protects the gun. Nobody protects the crew. General Israel Tal heard that message. He spent the next 6 years building something that had never existed before. A tank designed around one single obsession: keep the crew alive. The result broke every rule in armored vehicle design. And 40 years later, the United States Army is retrofitting its own tanks with the technology Israel invented. This is the Merkava, and it was built completely backwards. Before this video ends, you will understand why Israel put the engine at the front of the tank instead of the rear. A decision every other tank designer on Earth said was wrong. Why the Merkava can carry infantry inside its hull, like an armored personnel carrier, while simultaneously fighting as a main battle tank. Why it was the first tank in history to field an active protection system that shoots down incoming missiles before they hit the armor. And why, in Gaza right now, Merkava crews are surviving hits that would have killed the crew of any other tank on Earth. But here is the detail that makes all of this stranger. Israel was not supposed to build this tank at all. The British had already sold them something better. Then the British changed their minds. 1967. Israel wins the Six-Day War in 6 days, the most decisive armored victory since World War II. The next logical step is the British Chieftain, the most powerful tank in the world at that time, heavier armor than anything in the Soviet inventory, a gun that kills a T-62 at ranges the T-62 cannot return fire. Israel negotiates the purchase over several years. The deal is nearly complete. The specifications agreed, the price settled. Then Britain cancels it. Political pressure from Arab oil-producing states. The tanks Israel was counting on are not coming. Israel is left with aging Centurions and Pattons, and the knowledge that the next war will be fought without Western backing. General Israel Tal draws a single line under that lesson and begins designing from scratch. Then comes Yom Kippur, October 1973. Egypt crosses the Suez Canal with 2,000 tanks and 100,000 soldiers. Syria simultaneously hits the Golan Heights with 1,400 tanks against Israel's 177. In the first 48 hours, Israel loses 500 tanks. 500. The crews who survive come back with the same report. When a Soviet anti-tank missile hits the rear of an Israeli tank, it hits the engine compartment, directly adjacent to the crew. The fuel ignites, the ammunition ignites. The crew dies not from the missile itself, but from the fire that follows. Tal reads those reports and makes a decision the entire Western tank design establishment will spend the next decade calling insane. He moves the engine to the front. Every tank designer on Earth puts it at the rear. Since 1916, the logic: the front faces the enemy, so the front needs the most armor. The engine takes up space, so it goes to the rear. Tal rejects this entirely. If the engine is at the front, it becomes armor. A 1,200 horsepower diesel engine absorbs incoming rounds that would otherwise reach the crew. Yes, you lose the engine. Engines can be replaced in the field. Crews cannot be replaced at all. The front engine also liberates the rear hull completely, free for ammunition storage, free for equipment, and free for 4 infantry soldiers who enter and exit through a rear door while the tank continues fighting. A main battle tank that doubles as a personnel carrier. Nothing like it had ever existed. The Merkava Mark I enters service in 1979. 3 years later, Lebanon. Israeli Merkavas face Syrian T-72s, the most modern Soviet tank then in service. The same vehicle NATO feared most in Europe. The engagements are close, fast, and brutal in the mountain terrain of southern Lebanon. The Merkava kills T-72s. T-72 rounds hit Merkavas, and the after-action reports say this consistently. In engagements where both tanks were hit, Merkava crews survived at a dramatically higher rate than Syrian crews did. The front engine was absorbing hits. The sloped composite armor was deflecting rounds. The modular armor panels, designed to be replaced in the field after absorbing damage, were doing exactly what they were designed to do. Israel had built a tank that could be hit and keep fighting. That had never happened at this scale before. But Lebanon also taught lessons that forced a complete redesign. The Mark I's biggest vulnerability was not the armor. It was the top. RPG teams were climbing to elevated positions, rooftops, hills, bridges, and firing down onto the turret roof where the armor was thinnest. The Mark II added chains hanging from the turret edges, a solution that looks medieval and works perfectly. Shaped charge warheads from RPGs detonate on the chains before reaching the armor, dissipating the blast in open air. Israeli tank crews called them the Passover chains. They were effective enough that every subsequent Merkava variant kept them. And then came the threat that chains could not stop. And the solution that changed everything. 2011, a Hamas Cornet missile is fired at a Merkava Mark IV near Gaza. The Cornet penetrates 1,200 millimeters of armor, more than the Merkava's entire frontal protection. At that range, the crew should be dead. They are not. A radar detects the incoming missile. A computer calculates the intercept. A small explosive fires. The Cornet detonates in the air, 10 meters from the tank. The system that just saved them is called Trophy. When the United States Army saw what it did, they immediately began fitting it to their Abrams tanks. The technology Israel invented to keep its own crews alive is now protecting American soldiers. That is not a footnote. That is the point of the entire story. The Merkava Mark V Barak, the current production variant, integrates artificial intelligence into the fire control system. The AI assists target acquisition, tracking, and threat prioritization simultaneously. The commander sees a battlefield display that has already identified, classified, and ranked every threat within sensor range before the human eye has processed what it is looking at. The crew does not search for targets. The machine finds them, presents them, and waits for the human decision. General Tal's original obsession, keep the crew alive, has evolved into something broader in the 5th generation. Keep the crew cognitively free to make decisions while the machine handles the information load. That philosophy, embedded in a tank rolling through Gaza in 2024, is the most advanced expression of crew-centric design in the history of armored warfare. Gaza, October 2023. Hamas launches the largest attack on Israeli soil since Yom Kippur, exactly 50 years later. Merkava battalions move into dense urban combat in northern Gaza, the environment where tanks are most vulnerable, where every apartment building above street level is a potential firing position. The reports that come back repeat a pattern established in Lebanon 40 years earlier. Merkavas are being hit. Crews are surviving. Trophy is intercepting missiles that should have destroyed the vehicle. Modular armor is absorbing RPG hits and being replaced in field conditions. The tank returning to action within hours. In one documented engagement, a Merkava absorbed 7 separate hits in a single operation and drove back to base under its own power. The crew was uninjured. The tank was repaired and returned to service within days. Every major tank nation, the United States, Germany, Britain, France, Russia, built their tanks around one assumption. The gun is the priority. The crew is secondary. Israel, after losing 1,500 tankers in 73 hours in 1973, made a different decision. The crew is the priority. Everything else serves the crew. The engine goes to the front because the crew matters more than the engine. The rear door exists because the crew needs an exit. Trophy exists because no armor is enough. Every design decision in the Merkava traces back to that one lesson from Yom Kippur. And that lesson is now being adopted by every serious tank program on Earth. Here is where we are. A tank designed in the aftermath of catastrophic loss, built in defiance of British arms embargoes and Western design orthodoxy, with its engine in the wrong place according to everyone who knew anything about tanks, has produced the highest crew survival rate of any main battle tank in active combat in the 21st century. The United States is copying its protection system. Ukraine is asking for it. Every army that has studied the data has reached the same conclusion that Israel reached in 1974. The crew is the weapon. The tank is just the armor around them. Subscribe. Next week, we cover the vehicle that fought alongside the Merkava in Lebanon and proved that Israel's design philosophy extended beyond the tank itself.